I'm honored to see this many people here today. This is awesome. Thanks for spending your Valentine's Day with me. They say ships are romantic, so hopefully that kind of plays into this a little bit as we go through, you know, the romantic of the sea. But yeah, this presentation is going to dig into a lot of different little topics that deal with the Saginaw River. Like they said, retired, that's my family. I have twins, boy and a girl, my wife Marla. I had to show this picture because being a firefighter, we have to shave all the time. We can't have a beard because we have to put our face piece on. So when I retired from the Bay City Fire Department in 2020, I told them, I'm growing a beard. I don't care. I've never been able to do it for the last 20 some years. I'm growing a beard. So I grew it, they hated it. I captained a few trips with it, and then I had to shave it off. So working as a deckhand with Busch Marine on the Manitou, many of you guys have seen that boat around here. It did a lot of ship assists over the last few years. Busch Marine actually went out of business. Their family retired. They didn't have anyone that wanted to continue on with the business. And they sold to Riba Marine out of Sheboygan. So if you ever see the tug Kimberly Joy now, that is the tug Manitou. But I learned a ton under Captain Dave Malcolm. He was one of these salty old sailors and had that, to talk about sailors swearing, and that was Captain Dave, and I learned a lot from him. So drone pictures, I've been flying for the last 5 years. 2026 will be my 6th year flying. So it's really changed a lot for what you can and cannot see on the Saginaw River. You know, you were kind of limited with a hand camera and standing on the ground. So now being in the air, you can see a lot of things and a lot of history that you couldn't see before. You'll see that in this presentation, how it's changed what you can see and what you can't see. So the Saginaw River, there's a picture of the chart of the Saginaw River. Twisty, turny, a lot of sailors call it the ditch. I mean, it's very shallow. You get outside the mouth of the river here, it's only 1 or 2 feet deep on either side of the channel. It's really a shallow river. And if you get out of the channel coming up the river, you're in trouble. So you got to be real prudent and know the twists and turns and the water levels and everything else. The Saginaw River is formed by the confluence of a number of different rivers, including the Tittabawassee, Cass, Shiawassee, Pine, and many others. An interesting fact about the Saginaw River that a lot of people don't know or realize is that it flows to the north. It flows opposite of a lot of different rivers. So of over the 150,000 rivers worldwide, there's only 245 that flow north, and 48 of them being in the United States. Interesting fact too, it's very wind driven. If the wind's blowing out of the northeast, it'll pack water into the river and the current will change direction and flow towards Saginaw. When that wind dies down, that current will go back to flowing south out towards the bay. So water level, it's not unheard of to see a 4-foot rise or drop in the water depending on how strong the wind's blowing. So another thing you really got to watch with the Saginaw River. In the mid-1800s, increased traffic on the river from the lumbering era caused the need for improvements in navigating the river, and charts with accurate depth soundings were created to help the sailors coming up and down the Saginaw River and coming in from the bay. In 1865, it was dredged from the city of Saginaw out to the mouth at Saginaw Bay. And then in 1867, more dredging took place, creating a channel 13 feet deep out into the bay from the mouth of the river. And on the chart, you can see that still, the old channel that comes in, and that's the channel that lined up with the Saginaw River rear range lighthouse and the front range lighthouse. That's how you would line up coming in. The new modern channel goes out on a more northeasterly angle, and you never would have been able to use the lighthouse, but they do have range lights that are mounted on shore now that line up with that. But that old channel was the one that you would use the lighthouse for to come into the bay, into the river. So today, the Corps of Engineers is responsible for maintaining the channel. The Coast Guard does all the aids to navigation. There's both fixed and floating aids. You've heard of the spark plug and stuff. There's one at light 1, one at light 8, a fixed marker. The one at light 1 is a green marker. The one at light 8's got a red stripe. The entrance channel starts 14 miles out from the mouth of the river, and once you get in the river, it goes up another almost 18 miles to Saginaw. It's deeper when you enter and shallower at the end, so 27 feet deep at the entrance and 22 feet deep by the time you get up to Saginaw. So with commercial shipping, the first lumber mills were showing up around 1844, and within 20 years there were more than 50 of it. And with the increases of mills, there was an increase in traffic on the river, for sure. So between 1851 and 1897, over 25 billion, with a B, board feet of lumber were cut at the mills along the river. In 1888 alone, over 4 billion board feet of lumber was cut at Saginaw Mills. So how much is that? How much wood is that? What is 4 billion board feet of lumber? Well, it's about 750,000 8-foot-long 2x4s, or enough wood to build 250,000 homes of 2,500 square feet. So kind of an interesting stat with that's 1 year worth of lumber taken out of here. A logbook from the 3rd Street Bridge back in 1868 showed these following vessels passing through the span during the course of a season: 326 steamships, almost 1,700 tugs, just over 400 sailing vessels, and 217 barges. And it says an average of 86 vessels per day. Well, if you do the math, it doesn't really work out to 86. But you have to remember that the shipping season isn't a full 365 days because of ice and everything else. So on a daily basis, it averaged 86 vessels through the bridge. In retrospect, looking forward to 2025, last year, there was only 190 commercial vessel passages on the river for the entire year. So you can see that traffic was a lot higher. It was those lumber days were crazy days on the river. So talking about dredging on the river in the lumbering days, this past year in 2025, the Corps of Engineers authorized emergency dredging of the 6th Street turning basin up in Saginaw. It's one of the spots where vessels can turn around on the river. And you can see the black dredge pipe running along this roadway, comes up, back. This is a cell that had been filled in before, and these are open cells for the dredged materials to be pumped into. The barges come up here, and there's a suction dredge that will take the product up and pump it into the facility. This is right near Sheboygan Creek Bridge. And here's their suction dredge. There's a nozzle on the end of the excavator, and you can see the hoses that go to the piping. And they pump water into these barges and create a slurry or a soup to pump. You can see the dredged materials in this full barge. This is one that's partially emptied. And along the edges, you can see wood, logs, trees, stuff like that. And I was kind of curious on how they get that out of there, because those will never fit down that piping. It won't make the turns and everything. But there's a cutter head that chops stuff up on the end of that to make the debris smaller to fit through the piping. But it got me thinking about these logs. And here's the 6th Street turning basin and where they're dredging at. And you look and you can see old trees and logs. And this is just one barge. And they took out numerous barges out of here this past summer to deepen the turning basin. And you wonder, you get trees and branches and logs that come off the shoreline from the rivers that feed into the Saginaw River, but there's got to be wood on the bottom of the river from the lumbering days still that they're bringing up, you'd have to assume, and you wonder if any of these logs have the log stamps on the end of them or not. But you can just see that's just one barge of many that were dredged up, and how much lumber material was brought up from the bottom of the river. That's just one spot where they're digging. So it's just kind of interesting to think about that. You think back to the logging days, and there's still got to be logs from those log booms and log things that they brought from Saginaw, Bay City, or wherever, and resting on the bottom. And they've dredged this turning basin many times over the years, and they're still bringing up logs. So just kind of interesting to think about that and let your mind wander about the logging days and the things that they've brought up. And there's more history all over the river if you look for it. This is the Davidson remains down by Veterans Park in Bay City. And you can see old boilers from the Shenandoah, and skeletal remains of the vessels just above the water. And with the drones now, you can fly above it and you can see the outlines of the hulls. There's the Shenandoah, I want to say, I'll have to look at the map. I can't remember offhand the names, but we'll get that in a second. But the steamer Shenandoah, you can see the boilers still, and you can see their outline. And this is an old map that used to be on the boardwalk in front of the shipyard. And there's the steamer Shenandoah, the barge Granada, and the schooner barge Matanzas are the three that were visible in here, here, and here. So kind of cool history. They've got other boats that are buried. I mean, this is all ground now, but there's a dredge and some barges that are buried underground. These two are buried now, but this is still pretty awesome that you can see these remains out in the river still. And there's another drawing that kind of outlines those remains. The Chieftain, another Davison boat that was built here in Bay City. It was launched in 1902 and abandoned in 1938 by Cass Avenue, just to the south of Cass Avenue Bridge, right by the boat launch there. It burned to the water line in 1953. And in 2012, you could see the remains sticking up out of the water. And over the years, ice and stuff has kind of whittled away at those remains. And just by chance, taking a picture in 2023 with my drone, I didn't notice this at the time, but I got home and started editing the pictures, and I could see this silt that looked like the outline of a hull. And the passing ship was pulling the silt off the hull of the Chieftain along Cass Avenue. So this past year in 2025, with the water level being lower, you can now see the ribs again sticking up out of the water with the lower water levels when a freighter is going by. So the Davison boat, the Chieftain, is still around. And then here's a picture of the side-wheeled passenger steamer Montauk, one of the old walking beam steam engines. This photo was taken by Dick Wickland not long after, or not taken by, but it's from his collection, I should say. And the Montauk was built in Wilmington, Delaware, and launched in 1891. Steel hull, side-wheeled, for the Montauk Shipping Company. Over its years, it had numerous names. It went by the King Richard, the Forest City, the Montauk, and it left passenger service in 1944. Well, it ended up here in Bay City at the end of its life, docked outside of Fletcher Oil Company by Wheeler's Landing. It was bought by Lyons Construction Company from Whitehall and brought to the river in the 70s. They added this small cabin and wheelhouse to it, and that cabin burned a short time later in 1977. You can still see the remains of this today. I took this in 2023. You can see the outline of the hull still. And then with the lower water levels in 2025, you can see it sticking out of the water even more now. So there's history all over this river, and there's still other boats. And I know there was a vessel that was used to create the seawall at the cement plant in Essexville. There's other boats up in Saginaw that are at the bottom. So the history just is all around us here. Moving to more modern times now, and what I have been doing for the last 20-some years, since I've been keeping a log of every vessel that passes down the Saginaw River, what dock they deliver to, and list them by companies and vessel names and everything. So in 21 years, ending with the 2025 season, we've had almost 4,000 commercial deliveries to the Saginaw River. My first year of keeping records, there were 332 commercial deliveries to the river. The lowest year was 2014, only 110, and then things have kind of rebounded back up again, and we had 190 last year. So many factors factor in: water levels, the economy, products that are needed. So I don't think we'll ever see days like that again, but I think in the 200s, the low 200s will be a thing that we can see on a regular basis going forward. And there's just by year, you can see the high start, the decrease, and then kind of the climb back up again to where we are today from 2005 to 2025. There currently are 16 active docks that receive cargo on the Saginaw River this past year. By far the biggest commodity that's received here is aggregates and stone. Stone for road projects, stone to make concrete, stone for processing sugar beets. The Michigan Sugar Company uses a large limestone called sugar stone, and they tumble the beets with it to process the beets. So cement powder, we get boats that come from Alpena delivering cement. Liquid asphalt, there's a plant out in Bay City, Bitmat. They receive liquid asphalt by heated tankers and tanker barges. Liquid calcium chloride that comes from Occidental Chemical in Ludington for SC Johnson and Dow. Fertilizer, like dry fertilizer like potash that comes to Essexville to the Wirt fertilizer dock. Road salt, road salt's delivered from Goderich, Ontario to the Sargent dock in Zilwaukee. And that's one of the regional distribution centers for road salt in the area. And a little bit of sand and a little bit of coal still up in Saginaw. And international and bulk cargoes. And what are international and bulk cargoes? It can be anything. Here we have a phase where we're getting all the wind turbine parts from overseas. This is a load of turbine blades that came in. This cargo here, you can see the turbine blades in the back, but this cargo was machinery for Michigan Sugar for their molasses desugarization process they started up last year before. But this is parts for Michigan Sugar for getting sugar out of molasses. Boats, a couple of motor yachts came in from overseas. And here's another one. You got a sailing vessel and a motor yacht on this one that came in. So kind of interesting to see the different types of cargoes that come in. This was underwater electrical cable for the straits. A freighter had anchored near the straits and caught the electrical cable going between Mackinac City and St. Ignace and needed to be replaced. So this vessel brought in the cable. It was unloaded onto this barge with a big spool, and Busch Marine and Kokosing took this up there and replaced the cable running between the lower and upper peninsula. This is equipment that came in December of this year for Hemlock Semiconductor. It doesn't look like a lot here, but this floor and decking pulls up and there's more cargo underneath that they unloaded after this. So this was all loaded, unloaded it, pulled up the decking and unloaded more products for Hemlock Semiconductor. Some cargoes that we used to see here, grain. Grain was a big one. We'd like to see grain back again. The last grain was exported out of the Saginaw River in the early 1990s. This is a Dave Story photo from 1982 at the grain elevator in Carleton. Fuel. We all remember the Jupiter fire. I was there. I was a firefighter on scene that day. This is one of the Jupiter's fleet mates, the Gemini, unloading at the Total Petroleum dock in Bay City. We used to receive fuel oil for home heating at the Triple Clean Liquid Fuels dock in Essexville along Woodside. And of course the coal plant for consumers, everyone's favorite 1,000-footer, the Paul Tregurtha unloading here in Essexville. This was the old gypsum building at the end of the tramway in Alabaster. They tore that down a few years back, and they brought all the steel back here to the Port Fisher Terminals dock, unloaded it to be recycled. So that was barged down from Alabaster, brought here to Bay City to be recycled. Some other test things they did. Michigan Sugar had a vessel bring in totes. You can see the totes of granulated sugar, 2-ton totes from Mexico. And they were going to export out of here beet pulp for cattle feed for Europe. So they tried that the one time, and it must not have been a successful venture, and it was never continued after that. This is at the Port Fisher dock. This is a chemical tanker carrying ammonium nitrate for fertilizer. They did this for 3 or 4 years, brought it in for the farmers, and ended up stopping doing that too. So things that they've tried and tried to bring a diversity to the Saginaw River and things that they could bring in and bring more product here, and not all of them have worked for one reason or another, but there's been a lot of different things tried, and they're gonna keep on trying. This is the land. There's Independence Bridge and the Edson. This is on the east side of the river behind the old Woolahan lumber off Woodside. This was going to be Wilkinson Minerals. They were going to pump salt brine out from the Sylvania Formation and ship it out by water. They applied for this in 2020 and doubled down to double their investment to almost $250 million in 2021. And again, for whatever reason, it never happened. And in 2025, the city dissolved the agreement with Wilkinson, and the brownfield development plan has been shelved. There's talk that another investor is interested in it, but we'll see if it comes to fruition or not. So as of right now, there's nothing going on there. They cleared all the land. They cut all the trees down and got it ready, but never got any further than that. So it's unfortunate, but hopefully someone else can make a go of it. And then finally this year in 2025, this is the Interlake Logistics Tug and Barge Undaunted Pier Marquette 41. They came up to the Sargent Dock in Zilwaukee, and they loaded a cargo of gypsum. Sargent now has a gypsum mine, the Keyterra mine in Turner, Michigan, and this was the first cargo that was loaded on the Saginaw River and exported in a long time. And if you go by there now, you can see that they have another pile of gypsum building up, and the plan is to haul more cargoes of that out of the Saginaw River in 2026. So that's a positive sign to get more things moving and exports out of the Saginaw River. And you can see some pictures of the gypsum being loaded. These are all the active docks and how many cargoes they had in 2025. I had mentioned there was 190 vessel deliveries, but you can see our vessel passages, but there was 269 deliveries. And that's because vessels that come in, a lot of times unload at more than one dock. Some vessels came in this year and unloaded at 3 different docks. So that's why you get that bigger number. But Port Fisher by aggregates by far is the busiest, Port Stone and Saginaw, and Port Stone and Bay City. So a lot of different products, a lot of different docks that get delivered to. There's docks on both ends of the river. The upper river is from Liberty Bridge to Saginaw, and the lower river is from Liberty Bridge to the mouth of the river. And the number of deliveries is pretty consistent between both ends. 152 deliveries to the lower river, and 122 deliveries in 2025 to the upper river. Now people say, why are there docks up in Saginaw? They boats going through the bridges, causing trouble with traffic. But Saginaw is a major hub. It's right next to the expressway. It's cheaper for the companies to get trucks in to load product to go all over the state and beyond. So it's the Saginaw docks are an important part of the shipping industry here in this area. So what boats deliver here? You see all different shapes, colors, sizes, different varieties of vessels. 30 different boats delivered to the Saginaw River in 2025. Olive Elmore in Menominee was by far the most traveled here at 34. And those of you who follow the boats know that Olive Elmore by the distinctive thump, 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 thump that she's coming. You can hear her coming from a long way away. So you know when she's here. She's never going to sneak in on us. Since 2005, when I began keeping records, she's made 711 trips here, so she definitely knows the river well. And she's had the most visits of 19 of the last 20 seasons. That one season that she wasn't the highest total, Dorothy Ann and Pathfinder had that year. And she was the second most frequent visitor here last year. Here she is at the GM Coal Dock unloading last year. American Courage was the third most traveled. The cement barge, St. Louis Champlain and Innovation. The Robert S. Pearson. And I'm going to stop to take note of this picture because there's a lot going on here in this picture. You can see that it's got a tree hanging from its anchor, and you got a fire burning in Saginaw behind it. So I was just lucky to catch that at the right time that day. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this tree in a minute, but we're going to finish getting through this first. Defiance Ashtabula was number 5 tied with, and she was here on this trip not to unload, but she came for service. She's tied up at the Port Fisher Terminal's dock, and you can see the crew working on the bow thruster. So she came and unloaded just for repairs. So that's another thing that's great about the Saginaw River. We have facilities that have room for boats to come in and crews to work on them if they need to have repairs done. Olivelle Moore's had repairs. Other vessels have had repairs here before as well. So, in the companies, Rand Company owns a number of other divisions. Grand River is a U.S. flagged version. Rand Lower Lakes is the Canadian flagged. Rand also owns and has operation of the cement barges, and they also have American Steamship Company, the 1,000 footers. So they've just changed their name and will be operating under a different name in 2026. They kind of rebranded, and so we'll see that coming up. So that picture of the Robert S. Pearson with the tree branch, he had turned around up here in the 6th Street turning basin, and you can see how it's cut out so the vessels have room to turn. And when they turn, they come and they bow into shore. And in the old days, they used to have a milk crate hanging from the tree that the ships would line up with to turn. And the Pearson caught a branch and got it hung up on its anchor for its trip out. So don't know how long it stood hung there for, but it was kind of cool to see on the way out. Other turning basins, because I get asked a lot, where the ships turn at in the Saginaw River? And this is in Essexville by the train bridge. And this is smaller vessels here. This is like the Happy River, and it's only just under 500 feet long. Algoma Intrepid, Algoma Innovator can turn here as well, but they're almost touching both ends of the shore when they turn here. A little further down the river towards the mouth of the river, by the Port Fisher dock, slip, and the cement plant, the big vessels such as the American Mariner, who was 730 feet, can turn here. There's also the airport turning basin. You can see the James Clement Airport runway. And this is the Pathfinder and Dorothy Ann turning around in the airport basin. Certain vessels who unload in Saginaw who are maneuverable, like the Dorothy Ann and Pathfinder or the Mark Barker, they'll back down the river to save time. Rather than going up to Saginaw to the 6th Street turning basin, they'll back all the way down and turn around at the airport to save time, rather than having to backtrack. This is the Wilfred Sykes. Everyone kind of knows the Sykes from its association with the Edmund Fitzgerald. It made a lot of trips here in the early 2000s. And this is at the Wirt Stone Dock in Bay City, right by Independence Bridge. And there used to be a turning basin there. It wasn't an official turning basin that was dredged by the U.S. Corps of Engineers, but it was a private basin for Wirt, and vessels would turn around here. And they nose right up against the shore by the stone dock, swing their stern upriver, and then hit the bow thruster and head out. So it was always cool to go out to the Wirt dock in Bay City to see the vessels turn there. They haven't turned there in a number of years, and that dock, or that turning basin is not maintained. So what comes next? This year we had the McAsphalt Advantage make its first trip here with liquid asphalt. It's a dual fuel vessel. It liquid natural gas and traditional diesel fuel. The goal is to get grain exported out here again someday. And what's it going to take for that? Dredging, basically. The river's not deep enough, and we need to get federal dredging to come in here and dredge the river deeper. I've also been attending a few meetings on cruise ships coming to Bay City. You see the cruise ships all over the Great Lakes, going into Alpena, Mackinac, all over. And Bay City said, well, we have a lot more to offer than a lot of places do. Why can't we get cruise ships here? And again, it comes to river depth. It's just not a place to bring a cruise ship in to have a dock. So they're looking at it, and hopefully they can make that happen for the future too. That'd be a great thing for our community. So now I'm going to feature a couple of vessels that are located here in the Saginaw River. The tug North Dakota is a tug that started operating here on the Saginaw River 2 years ago. This had its 3rd season. It's docked up at the old cement dock in Carlton. Belongs to the Great Lakes Towing Company out of Cleveland, Ohio. 116 years old, built in 1910. She looks good for her age. The Great Lakes Towing does a good job of keeping their tugs serviceable. And she works hard. She's done a lot of work on the Saginaw River since she's been here. She had a busy year this year. Originally launched as John Truby, served under that name until 38. Got a diesel motor in 1949. And this photo was downtown Bay City this past December. 1,250 horsepower Cleveland diesel. 81 feet long, 20 feet wide, and an 11-foot, 6-inch depth. And it doesn't look that big, but as much as you see above the water, that much is below the water, and her propeller is huge. So she's very, very powerful, very maneuverable, and does a good job breaking ice and assisting vessels. You know, she looks tiny next to the Algoma Intrepid here, but here she is assisting the Iverbright into the slip at Port Fisher. Again, doing a vessel assist off the Port Fisher Terminal's dock. And it's not just foreign vessels. A lot of times, Canadian and American flagged vessels also require a tug assist. It just depends on conditions in the river. It can be current, it can be a bow thruster being out, it can be anything. So the ships appreciate having a tug here on the Saginaw River again, full time to be available for service. Here she is assisting the John J. Boland. Boland's backing down the river to turn off the cement plant. Mark Barker is here unloading. So the North Dakota is just acting as steering for the bow of the boat as she backs down the river because their bow thruster was out on this trip. So, and here's a video of the North Dakota breaking ice this past December. She's breaking the ice with the Iverbright to get in the slip to unload liquid asphalt that bit that. She goes into the slip, clears out the slip, makes a spot for the boat to come in. When she gets done breaking out the slip, she'll go out and take a pass around the Iverbright to get the pressure off the hull to make it easier for them to make the turn to get in the slip. It's just pretty impressive for a tug that's going to be 117 years old to do what it's still doing. You can see how much it's broken up that ice and taking that pressure off the hull. And I got one more little short video of it actually doing a vessel assist up through the train bridge and Liberty Bridge here in Bay City. Here the Algoma Compass is unloading at the Wirt Stone Dock in Essexville. And they're going to assist it up through the Bay City bridges up to Saginaw. So let's talk North Dakota. A great asset for us to have here on the Saginaw River to help out if needed, and they've done 30 to 40 vessel assists each year since they've been here. So they're doing a good job, and glad to have them. All right, now we're going to go local. The tug Barbara Mary Busch, 87 years old. And she was built right here in Bay City at the Defoe Shipbuilding as the Thomas Moran back in 1938. So this is at Defoe, up on the blocks. And then here's her launch into the Saginaw River. These photos are from the David Boone collection, so I appreciate that. And there she is out on sea trials on Saginaw Bay. And you can see, look in these pictures, look at the pilot house, how the pilot house is down. In that first picture, the pilot house was up. It's got a pilot house can raise and lower for work on the Erie Canal. So this was a prototype tug also for the United States Navy, a yard tug big. And it was launched in 1938, and then in 1940 it was requisitioned to the Navy and served in duty as the USS Namontack. After the war, she came back and went back to Moran Towing and operated as the Harriet Moran. You can see the pilot house in this picture is up, not down. She worked for Moran until 1975. She was sold the Wallen Marine and renamed the Viking. She was sold to Georgetown Towing after that, and I could not find a picture anywhere on the internet, anywhere else, anyone that had a picture of her as the Georgetown. So she operated in South Carolina for Georgetown Towing from 93 to 99, and then to McAllister Towing until 2005 as the Sharon Elizabeth. She was bought by the Zenith Tugboat Company in 2005 and renamed Statesboro. Franz Van Rydell had a towing company that he operated with a number of tugs, and then he sold it to a Busch Marine in 2006, and they brought it here back to Bay City, back to where it was built and launched at all those years ago. Busch never really used her, and she still sits there today. You can see Statesboro and Sharon Elizabeth names kind of overlapping back there. This is at the Busch Marine dock up in Carlton. There's a picture of her interior, all the beautiful brass. And that's how she sits today, sitting on the bottom of the river, leaning up against the big tug Gregory J. Busch. There's a lot of theories on why neither of these tugs are working and why Gregory J. Busch hasn't worked in years. I haven't talked to them. I'm just kind of speculating. When Coast Guard Subchapter M came out, it's a safety standard for tugboats. It put a lot of small tug businesses out of business because of the cost upgrade to the current safety standards. I was working on the tug Manitou when that came out, and I saw the money they put into the Manitou, video cameras in the engine room, new monitoring equipment for all the vessel's systems. It was just a big expense to upgrade the vessel to meet the Coast Guard standard Subchapter M. And it's my belief that that's what happened here. They didn't want to invest the money in it. They didn't have the jobs going on. So these tugs have been sitting here for a number of years and not been used. It's sad to see a Bay City built Defoe tug sitting there on the bottom like that. And who knows what their future holds, but hopefully it's something positive. You can see her leaning up against the Gregory J. Busch. Yep, that's the tug Barbara Mary Busch. Had a lot of names, did a lot of work over her 87 years, and now she's just resting here on the Saginaw River. Her fleet mate, the tug Gregory J. Busch, also a 100-year-old tug, 107 years old. Big tug. Big changes too. You can look at that first picture, how she looks currently and how she started out. She was built in 1919, Whitney Brothers, Superior, Wisconsin, as the tug Humacana. She served under that name until 1977, so she carried that name most of her career. She worked for the Maryland Ring Lumber Company, Western Pacific Railroad, And this next picture is a great picture of her. She looks great, great looking tug. She was sold to a private owner, John Caron, and then to another private owner. In 1961, she went to any towing service. And then the Nicholson Company out of Detroit brought her back to the Great Lakes in 1962. She was bought by local tug guy, Bill Stender, here in Bay City in 1969. And then Busch Marine bought her from Stender's in 1977. This picture is actually when Hugh McConnell came to the Saginaw River. This is on the Saginaw River in 1976, this photo of her. That's how she looked. She's going to go through a big transformation here once Busch buys her to that. That was her in 1981 in Saginaw. Busch gave her all new steel, new pilot house, new cabins, new stacks, added a salvage crane to the back. Salvage crane didn't last long, evidently. They took that off right away. But you can see with the new paint. You're working on the Saginaw River. You can see the Sam Lau backing down the Saginaw River to turn here in the turning basin. Busch was breaking ice for her. They added a raised wheelhouse to it. You can see it still hasn't even been painted yet. There's no radar up there or anything. It's just bare steel. And she got a new hydrocon coupling system to pin into the barge primary one in the STC 2014, or 2004, I'm sorry. And there's those new couplers they added. Now they got all the stuff on top of the pilot house, everything's painted. The Busch assisted the Edson moving from where they brought her in from in Bay City and Essexville up to her current dock by the Independence Bridge. And you can see the other Busch tug, the Edwin Busch, assisting as they put it into place here in Bay City. They're up at their dock in Carlton. There's the states, or the Barbara Murray Busch and the Gregory J. Busch. And Busch was the local tug for a number of years before they stopped operating and North Dakota came up here. But Busch would do all the tug assists for a long while. Here's assisting one of the boats that brought ammonium nitrate fertilizer in. And again, that's where they're resting today. So that's the tug Gregory J. Busch, 107 years old. Just want to go through some navigational challenges on the Saginaw River. And we complain about getting stuck by the bridges when a boat comes through. Well, the boats get stuck too. You can see the boats waiting for a train to cross the Saginaw River on the Lake State Railroad Bridge. So they get stuck too sometimes. Not only by bridges with the train going over it, but bridges that won't open. This was when I got a trip on the tug Joyce Van Eckenvoort, Great Lakes Trader. I'm up in the wheelhouse, and we're going through the train bridge and Liberty Bridge here in Bay City. And it just shows how little room they have to make that. And it's not a straight line up either. You can see the bows pointed up here. They have to get the whole 700 and some feet through the bridge, almost 800 feet, and then make the turn to get through Vets Bridge. So some of these longer boats, it's tough to get up the river. And this boat was long enough where they couldn't turn up in Saginaw without taking the tug out of the notch and turning in the 6th Street turning basin. Here's the Joe Franz in the mid-70s, got caught in heavy current from a rain at Independence Bridge. Current took them, wedged them in. They were there for a few days until Malcolm Marine could come up and assist getting them straightened back out and through the bridge. This is a few years ago. This is the Calumet. It's hard to see in this picture, but this is the Lake State Railroad Bridge, and its bow is up against the one side, and its stern is in the mud over on the other side out of the channel. And that was one of those cases where the wind had been blowing strong out of the northeast, had raised the water level, all that water packed in up in Saginaw. The wind stopped, and that water started rushing out, and just the timing was bad, and the Calumet got pushed out of the channel and kind of got hung up there. They were moved out the next day by one of the Ludke tugs with no damage. So just little incidents like that happen quite a bit. Here's the Cuyahoga. You can see it's full astern. Liberty Bridge wouldn't open, so he had to put the brakes on and try and stop before he hit into Liberty Bridge. And once they got started again, you got to realize these boats need speed to turn. So the slower they're going, the harder it is to turn them because there's not much water flowing over their rudder. So after being stopped there, they got going, and they actually came up against the dolphins going through and didn't hit the bridge, but hit the pilings coming through because they didn't have enough speed to control the boat getting through the bridges. This picture is interesting. The Elgo rail is not moving. The Elgo rail is stopped. The Elgo rail had run aground here carrying salt up to Saginaw and was waiting for the Busch tugs to come down to offload product to float it higher to get off. This is the Bay City sailboat Dolphin, and it was coming around and just cut too close, caught the steering pole, and kind of heeled over. So not the best day for the captain on the Dolphin, but and there's the Busch tug offloading salt to get the Elgo rail floated. That's me on the bow of the Manitou, and we were doing a vessel assist with the Melissa. That's the boat I showed earlier in the presentation with the electric cable that was going up to Mackinac. And when we do a vessel assist, we send our line aboard, and the deckhands pull our line up, and when we're done, they drop the line down. Well, you're not supposed to drop the line. You're supposed to lower the line down because they dropped it and went over the fluke of the anchor. So then we're stuck to the Melissa, and I ended up having to step up onto the bow and reach over with my hand to pull it off the anchor fluke because you can see how the pole's bending. The pole wasn't strong enough to pull it up off of there. So I had to crawl up there and actually pull the loop off the anchor fluke. And that little blue scratch in the paint, that's from the anchor when we hooked and we were backing up, and it pulled the anchor out of the pocket back here and up the side of the boat. So it can be scary times. And then here was a tug assist, tug Manitou, tug Gregor J. Busch assisting the Elgaway. Elgaway had been here a couple of days because of high water current, and they couldn't get turned, so these came in. The Busch, you can see the exhaust smoke is pushing over here on her port side, and the Manitou's on her starboard side. And he pushed the Manitou right up against the shoreline. So I was standing, you see where I was standing to take these pictures, and I heard metal hit the concrete. So they were actually against the shoreline. So they're lucky they got out of there without any major damage. So that's just the unpredictability of the Saginaw River and the current, and two tugs operating together and probably not communicating properly with each other. There's Captain Dave operating the tug from the back controls. They have controls on the back. So he's not up in the wheelhouse, he's actually right there controlling the tug. And that's the CS Altatasac unloading at the S-Rock dock in Essexville at the cement dock. They had a boom failure. The brakes failed on the boom, and the boom crashed down to the dock. And then here's the Franz. Again, bad luck on the Saginaw River. The first time was the Independence Bridge. Now this is at Sheboygan Creek, and it had gone out of the channel. And I'm not sure what happened in this case, but they left the channel and got in the mud. You can see River Road, and you can see the Franz right up against River Road here. So that'd be something to see coming down the road. But again, tug Manitou came in, pulled it out, got it back in the channel, and they were on their way. So, and of course the Jupiter fire. This was one of the pictures from where I was on scene at the Jupiter fire. Another one of the probably the biggest disaster that we've had in the Great Lakes in a while. And I just want to say thank you. I appreciate you guys coming out to listen to me talk today, and a little bit of history of the Saginaw River. I'm not quite sure how I got into this. I was a photographer taking pictures and keeping a historical record, and it's kind of morphed into more than that. And I'm glad it has, because I enjoy coming out and talking to everybody and telling my stories and showing my pictures. And I enjoy chronicling the history of the Saginaw River. I've got 21 years of vessel history now, and hopefully I can keep doing it for many more years to come and see where it goes. So I'll open it up to some questions right now if anyone has any questions. I mean, I'm not an expert on anything, but I'll do my best to answer any questions that you might have. Those are my socials, by the way, too. My Saginaw River images at Facebook, Instagram, and I got a blog page as well. So, all right, go ahead.
Got from '05 to '25, a third of the traffic gone. What was the major change? What stopped being transported?
I'm not sure anything stopped being transported. I just think less was brought in. And again, water levels come into play too. I don't remember what the water levels were in 2025, but vessels had to make more, or 2005, vessels have to make more trips when there's lower water because they can't load as deep. So to get the same amount of product, it takes more trips. The economy was different then. I'm not an expert on the economy of the shipping and why it decreased so much from the 300s down to 114. But
there's less boats.
Yeah,
Scrap a lot of them.
less boats too. So yes, in the back.
Any comments on the river pilots and their skill set?
Amazing, totally amazing. These river pilots spend a lot of their career as captains on the Great Lakes and go in to become river pilots. On these boats, the Canadian and U.S. flag boats that come in here, there are no pilots on it. The captain is able to bring it up with them themselves. When the foreign flag vessels come in, like the Happy Ranger and different boats with the international products, one of the Western Great Lakes pilots are on board and do the ship hand. They either tell the crew what to do, or sometimes the captains let them actually do the handling. But they're amazing. They know everything, and you're in awe. There was a few of them that would come into Port Fisher Terminals dock, and we'd be there with the tug Manitou to assist. And the pilot would say, "Nope, just hang off my stern. I don't want any help. I can do it myself. If I need you, I'll call for you." And we always kind of chuckle at those guys. It's like, yep, cowboy. He's going to bring it in there and doesn't need any help. So hopefully he doesn't have any problems. But it's always good to have that safety net there with the tug, just in case. Yes?
I was growing up in the 1950s in the previous century. My father, a Navy man during the big one, WW2, would bring me down to the port of Winona every time the foreign ships would come in.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So I literally grew up going on those foreign ships with my own father, and he would talk shipping and all that with the captain, and they'd sit me down with a glass of orange juice and whatever.
And that's another thing that's really changed too, because when those ships used to come in to unload, it would take much longer to unload. So they'd have time to get off the boat, go ashore, go shopping, go to the restaurants, go to the bar. They always call it going up the street, And that they unload now in 3-4 hours, 5 hours, and they don't have time to do that anymore. So that was something that was a big thing back in the day.
So I've had a lifetime of loving the Saginaw River and all the boats on it, and thank you so much for putting this on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
One of your pics had a barge being unloaded. It was a pier mark at 40.
Yes. That used to be old car ferry. Yep. Converted to a barge. Yes.
The slides that you had that showed the boats that had been burned down to the water line and left, is that safe, to leave that? I mean, particularly private owners.
There's a lot of discussion about that. People will ask, how can they just leave that boat there to pollute the river or rot, or who's responsible if someone does get on it and get hurt? I don't know the answer to that. It's one of those things. They've been there forever, and who owns them now? I mean, who would the ownership go back to? It's hard to say. I can't answer that. Yes.
Yeah, this is kind of a follow-up to foreign ships going through. How many do we still have that, foreign ships, international ships?
Not a lot. We only had one in 2025.
Really?
That was it. But back 3 years earlier, when they were bringing all those turbine parts in, we had over 20 those years. So it's cargo dependent. Over the last 5 years, there's been 4 or 5, mostly industrial cargo for Michigan Sugar or Hemlock Semiconductor or whatever. But I know that's something that they'd like to change, and exporting grain out of here again would be a huge thing for the Saginaw River.
We've been living on Arbor Street on the riverside for over 40 years. And one of our great memories was a Brazilian ship coming through, heading to Saginaw, and it was around supper time, and they were playing bongo. And it was incredible. You know?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, definitely some interesting things. And a couple of the ships that we assisted when I was on Manitou, they had swimming pools on the back of their boat. So you would look on the back and they'd have a pool set up for them to swim in. So, any other questions? Yeah, in the back.
That gypsum that exported from Carlton or Saginaw?
Yeah.
Is that trucked in? Or?
It's trucked in. It's been trucked into the dock there in Carlton from the mine in Turner.
Okay, that was.
And then
They tore out the old dock there. They just chose that dock out of Saginaw to.
the company that owns the mine, that's their dock.
Okay.
So they bring it there. What was I going to say? They
Logistically, it just seems a little confusing.
Right.
Because I'm sure they have a deep water dock near the old dock in Alabaster. To truck it down and then store it and then export it up the river or down there.
yeah, all those docks are gone. But I lost my train of thought again. Oh, anyway, I apologize. There should be a number of loads of that taken out again this year, and there's been talk about bringing it down by train too, because there's train lines that go in that area. I think it's just a small mine, and it's not a ton of cargo at a time. So it is use it as a staging point to build up their pile until they're ready for a load to go off. So if it was a bigger operation, I don't know if they'd do it a different way, but just starting out right now, it's kind of a small operation, so that's what's working for them.
We'll take any exports we can get.
Absolutely, for sure. Yes.
How deep would the river have to be to export grain by boat?
26 feet,
What was that, Gordy?
26 to
Yeah.
the burning basin.
Yeah. It's only at 22-ish up there right now, or less. Probably less right now with the water levels. So they probably got to take it 5-6 feet of river out to, and that's a lot.
Is the grain going out by train now?
Train, yep. Training.
Because there's less of it, or just?
Just because the river's not deep enough to get the boats in here to do it that way.
Did the flood of 2020 affect sediment levels on the Saginaw River to start out?
They always do. The currents are always filling in pockets. Right now, the airport turning basin is in desperate need of dredging. It's very shallow in there. They did the emergency dredging on 6th Street this year. Every year with the spring runoff, it definitely washes silt down and fills in areas. So the Corps of Engineers does a survey once a year of the river, and they highlight the high spots that need to be hit. And there is dredging scheduled for 2026. It's in the budget for 2026. Whether it happens in 2026 or not, it's a different story, but it's been noted and it's supposed to happen, some dredging, so.
So nothing specific to
No.
the dam failures?
No. One boat got stuck on the Saginaw River because of that. The Algoma Buffalo was here and they were tied up, and they remained tied up with extra lines on and everything when that happened. But there's really no outstanding effects in the Saginaw River portion from that, so. Any other questions? Yes?
If they needed a tug here, where would it come from?
The tug is, the North Dakota's docked in Carlton at the old cement plant. So the crew generally comes from Detroit, so they need to give a couple hours notice for the crew to get up here. It's not manned 24/7, but they can get up here pretty quick and take the tug on, so. Yes.
The current Port Fisher bed aggregate, that is the former Amoco dock.
Yes, that's where the old Amoco tankers were in that slip where they're at now.
I worked out there quite a bit at one point when they were, so that must have brought a lot of boats in when that was in operation back there.
Yeah, I'm sure. That's
It doesn't resemble anything anymore.
Right.
Other than it has the port like in there, like, you know, the slip.
I know when they moved the aggregates from downtown Bay City to there, they did a lot of work, redid the seawall, redid the channel, cleared all that property, and there's actually 4 docks that operate on it. There's Bay Aggregates, Bitmat,
Triple,
the oxidochemical with the liquid calcium chloride, and then the international dock there, so,
the chemical had a dock at one time too.
yeah,
The building's still there. You know, you can't see it in the river, but
right.
it's probably very shallow.
Anybody else? All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. You've been a great audience.